everyone, and thanks for tuning in, listening, and watching this episode of the ROC Nation Real Talk podcast. And our guest today is Dr. Lucretia Berry, and she is the founder of Bronticity, an agency dedicated to advocacy, education, support for racial healing, and anti-racism. And she's also a former college professor whose love for humanity led her to author What Lies Between Us. And actually, we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. And also, she is the anti-racism curriculum specialist for Community School of Davidson, North Carolina, and a contributor for Encourage.me and a TED Talk speaker and more. And now you can add to your list a guest on ROC Nation podcast.
Yay! I'm building my resume.
Yes, we'll see how much weight that carries. But thanks so much, Dr. Berry, for being on the program today. And so I just want to ask you, as we get started here, tell us a little bit about your organization, Bronticity, and how you got along this journey.
Right. Well, Bronticity, I'll first say, is very learning-centered. It's a very learning-centered organization, and we serve our community where there has been a deficit of education around how race and racism have worked in our nation. And so it was really born out of, a need to be able to support and build the capacity of people to have informed and healthy dialogue in a way that allows us to participate in renewal, which I love what ROC stands for, renewing our city. So it allows us to be able to participate in renewal in very helpful ways. And so Bronticity itself is a made up word. I say that it's a word from the future, and it's made up of the word brown. And then icity comes from ethnicity. And so it's an extension of our family conversation. I am African-American. My husband is white American, actually from Iowa, Indianola specifically. The one I know, right? Yay. We met at Iowa State, go Cyclones. And we actually met doing this type of work. So as we became great friends and then later were married, we've always had very been very intentional about the conversations and the words that we used. We knew that our children, being multi-ethnic, would need to be equipped and skilled to be able to navigate our very hyper-racialized society, because we knew that as soon as they walk out of the door, people are going to want them to fit into these kind of binary monoracial categories, which of course don't fit our family. So essentially we started our conversations with the notion of being very comfortable and normal with our different skin tones. Like there's 5 of us and we are 5 different skin tones. And our oldest at 4 years old observed that we were all hues of brown. And I thought this was profound because yes, she's right. Brown is the color of melanin. And melanin is what we all have, like someone who is deep brown like me. I have more melanin because my ancestors came from a place that was closer to the equator geographically, and they would have needed more melanin to protect against the sun's rays. And then my husband, his ancestors came from a place further away from the equator because they would have needed less melanin in order to absorb more of the sun's rays. So children can understand that, right? It is simple and it's truth and it's factual, So that was kind of our foundation, not only an explanation, but even our approach to be very honest and truthful about why we look different and why phenotypically we look different. And then when that's normalized, then we can layer on top of that, the conversations and teaching and understanding about how in our country we've been kind of racialized into these hierarchies for social political purposes. Okay, so anyway, that's where brown comes from. And then icity comes from the word ethnicity, and ethnicity means that which we have in common. And so our tagline is, we are many hues, one humanity. And so essentially Bronticity gives us the space to be able to have nuanced and complex conversations around what we look like and how we've been racialized, and without having to stick to kind of this dichotomy of, black, white, good, bad, you know, up, down. So it just gives us that space to be able to explore and create and imagine.
So, yeah, so what are you seeing as far as trends as it relates to discussion about race and these subjects? You know, what 5 years ago, today, you know, what do you see? What are some of those things that you've been seeing and are seeing now, and maybe towards the future?
Well, right now I see that people are becoming more aware that color blindness is not a viable solution. It is actually, it sounds great in theory, like, oh, we're all equal. However, the truth is, the way that our policies have been designed historically and the way that we practice socializing, we are not equal. And so when people profess color blindness, it essentially kind of masks the discrepancies in decision making, and it shuts down any kind of helpful acknowledgement of what is going on. So it silences a lot of stories in favor for like maybe a dominant narrative that could be true for you, but not for me. And so, initially, like over about 5 years, because we started officially like 5 years ago, I've seen people being more willing to move beyond or move outside of or let go of color blindness as their kind of shield and move into having more informed, conscious, into, more of a competence and a confidence to talk about race, this topic that has been taboo traditionally. And so it's been great to see that movement happen. Mm-hmm. And so people are moving from the whole, I'm not racist, to more of a, oh, I get that I need to be actively anti-racist. And there's a difference, between those.
Segue. Yes,
I saw you going there.
Right. So I mean, I recall, and I thought it was a good thing to say, hey, I'm colorblind. I don't see color, but it'd be like saying too, I don't see the fact that you're tall. I don't see the fact that you're, shorter, or I don't see the fact, and it, I understand kind of where it came from, but it doesn't really add value to the conversation.
That's right. You're right.
Discussion at all.
That's right.
I think there's enough going on that is non-value added. We don't need to throw in these other things that just, the intention is value added, but but in reality it's not. And so it's being able to see those differences, right? And accept and understand and acknowledge, and go forward with that. And so, my next question really has to do around that subject of, can I not just say I'm not racist? Is that not enough for me to just say I'm not racist?
And so I will answer that by saying, no, it is not enough. Point blank. We must be actively anti-racist. And I use the story, I heard this, I wish I remember where I heard it so I could give the credit there, but I heard someone liken it to how maybe about 10 years ago, the deaths caused by drunk driving were significantly higher than they are now. Well, what changed? Well, there's an organization, there's mothers who organized and got together and created MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and other organizations to address the issue of deaths caused by drunk drivers. And so policies were, enacted, practices were changed. We learned so much about what happens when you drink and drive. I mean, we are so informed now about what happens with alcohol and driving that, we can't imagine not knowing this stuff before. And then of course we've seen, police officers give you the breathalyzer test. It's all of the stuff to protect the society from the outcomes, the negative outcomes of, the outcomes of drunk driving. And we've seen the number of deaths, of course, decrease significantly. And so that's the difference. We could have been like, well, I don't drink and I don't drive. Right. So, what does that have to do with me? Or But no, like we organize and we enact, we put policies in place to correct, behavior, to correct practices. And again, we're even so educated about it. We even know, like typically people know the point that is considered, too drunk or too inebriated to drive in their state. That's just how informed we are. That's the difference between being, like non-racist and being actively anti-racist, is that we make the changes happen versus sitting back saying, well, or believing that we're not contributing to the injustice.
Mm-hmm. So somebody that, is unfamiliar with addressing, not unfamiliar with the subject, but unfamiliar with engaging in conversation like this.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a part of some discussions where some individuals are just saying, I don't know exactly what to say.
Right.
And I don't want to say the wrong thing.
For sure.
So, what advice can you give someone desiring to engage and enter into the discussion? Right. Again, is just has some apprehension.
Right. And I totally understand that. And because we've been deprived of language, permission and a framework, I believe on purpose. So most people don't have the language or the framework or, know what to say. And that's primarily why, Bronticity exists as this agency that is focused on learning and building the capacity of learners to be able to engage in informed and healthy dialogue and action. So I would say,
Lucretia, what do you mean about the on purpose? What do you mean on that? Before you go forward a little bit, you said that you've been or that we've been
deprived on purpose.
There we go. That's
okay.
That's that word.
Right. No, it's fine. Okay. So right. So let's just take the colorblind approach. Like that purposefully shuts down any understanding, any equipping through the history. Oftentimes we don't know what to say because we have an ahistorical approach and an ahistorical perspective. We don't know the history that of race in our country and how it was created and how it was, perpetuated with policies and narratives. And I, typically, like, I think I went to kind of I attended a standard school, for education. And so those of us who maybe attended a standard formal public school or a standard, public school who received an education, like our history lessons and civic lessons and social studies lessons did not tell the story or did not allow us to learn the story of how race has been perpetuated and racism has been perpetuated throughout our nation's very young existence. And so we kind of get like this very superficial, watered down understanding of how we got to this place. And, generally people think, well, the slaves were freed or enslaved Africans were freed a long time ago. And then there was Dr. Martin Luther King, and then he made everything right. Okay. So again, that's not what happened. And there's so much more that that's gotten us where we are. So that's why I say we could. So for example, when I would come home from school, my parents would I'll say that they would amend what I was learning in school. So I had some more idea, of how we kind of got to be where we are. But if you weren't coming to my house or you didn't go to the house, if this wasn't happening in your home, you've been deprived of that. And I think that to a degree, I do think that is on purpose, because when people know, I'll just say this, when people find out, when they do take a course like What Lies Between Us, with the emphasis on lies, when people do find out, they do feel betrayed. They feel betrayed. Even my high school students, now they are like 9th through 12th grade, and they feel betrayed that they don't that they say, how come we weren't already learning this in elementary school?
Right.
And so, yes, people are going to feel, like you said, very insecure about what to say and saying the wrong thing. And so my advice is to shore up your confidence with education. Now, I would say, maybe 5 years ago, there would have been, that would have, been a challenge to find a place or find an organization or, some kind of curriculum. But I feel like in 5 years, so much has like been developed or made more accessible. Like it's all been more democratized, so you can have access to it, which is amazing because not everybody, can, take a semester and go to the university to take, a course, right? And again, that was my goal as a former college professor, was to bridge all of the good resources and information that I had access to, and to, bridge that to, the masses or whoever is hungry to learn. And so that helps. I would say educate, learn, enroll, and that will shore up your confidence significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is some apprehension, and again, I remember part of one group on Facebook, Race and Grace. A friend of mine, JJ Jones, he's out in Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and he started this group called
Mm-hmm.
Race and Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had asked the question, what do you want us to do? It was a white individual asking a person of color, what do you want us to do? And really, it was, just want you to listen, want you to be authentic and listen and hear us and really, share your feelings. But that's the thing there. It's about the authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just coming alongside were
Mm-hmm.
some of the things that she was saying as well, just coming alongside and being there with us and for us. And so I think there's some apprehension, but I think, as you say, the more that some of these myths about using terms like color blindness and people beginning to see really what does that do? That just, again, that shuts down. That's the hand going up saying, hey, I got this, I don't have a problem. And in some of the continuous improvement world that I work in, as soon as you say, I don't have a problem, it's a clear indication that you have a problem. So along that line, you've mentioned it a couple of times, and I did as well. The book, What Lies Between Us. So tell us a little bit about that and your intention with the book itself.
Right. And so What Lies Between Us, technically, it's really a curriculum. So my background as a college professor is in education, curriculum, and instruction. And honestly, I feel very fortunate that I was able to take courses in anti-racism education. And actually, some of the lessons that are in the book, in the curriculum, I actually are from my graduate school lessons. I just, kept them and expanded on them. But essentially, our institutions of education, whether it be, school or church, these institutions that we rely on to inform us and teach us, have somewhat, have done us a disservice, like I said, regarding race. And so what I designed through this curriculum is just this very foundational apparatus of like, here's what you need to know about, how race was created, how it was perpetuated, how it's maintained systemically. And also you need an analytical lens, you need a lens to be able to look at all of these things, objectively, and you need a lens to see yourself, to see how you've been shaped and formed by, the very forces that have been at play for hundreds of years. Because oftentimes, especially if we are Christian, we think that, our only influencing force is God or, or our parents or something. And they're like, no, there's all of these other things that are at work and at play and have been put in place. People are often amazed at how all of these things were written down. So nobody's making up anything. No one's falsely interpreting it. It's all policy, law. Things are in the Constitution. And then when you point them out and we help connect these dots, then, people have these aha moments. And so essentially I developed the curriculum based because, people had questions. So people, well-meaning people, beautiful people said, now I know that this is wrong, or this doesn't make sense, but I don't understand how or why. And so my goal is essentially not to tell you what or how to think, but essentially just to give you these tools so you can see, like, again, how we've been shaped and formed, and why things are the way that they are. And with my background in education, I've scaffolded it, for the beginner. So I call it a kindergarten course. When I first created it, I saw that a lot of great resources to me, seemed to be for people who are already a little more advanced or already aware and on the journey, but there was rarely anything for someone who maybe was still professing color blindness. There was not something for those people.
Right.
And so I wanted to create something for that. And then also what we do with race and a lot of that maybe anti-racism materials and workshops, things that I attended, it's like we have people drink from a water hose. I mean, and I would watch people, and I'd be in the room like, okay, well, I already know this stuff, and it's a lot to digest. So I wanted to lay it out in a way that these complex issues and ideological ways of thinking about the world were broken down into digestible pieces. So it is scaffolded lessons that build on each other. We start with something simple, and then by the time you get to, doing a power analysis, you have a better understanding of why that's even important. But if you try to start there, that all kind of walls go up for people.
Right. Yeah. Most individuals just they're not in a position to be able to deal with those things.
Right.
Yeah. So then you lose them. Well, so it's just then you do a series of classes. Is that how that works? How long does that go then as you work with that curriculum?
Okay, so what lies between us essentially is 10 chapters. And so the way that I pulled it together, you can do it individually. Like you could buy the book and then access the supplemental resources on the website. So it's, kind of like a syllabus, or, I have all the resources on the, like the videos and articles maybe you need to read, or talks. Those are all on the website. And then I'll just show it, like the book itself guides you through it. There's me, you can hear my voice having a conversation with you. And then there's a part of it that is introspective, which is so important, because otherwise, if you don't have this kind of supported introspection, reflection, renewing how you think, rewiring, then essentially you just pile, new information on top of old information. But your brain needs some help to process that. So that is what, the journaling part is for and is about. So you could go through it on your own at your own pace, or like my father-in-law, Pastor Dan Berry, he teaches live face-to-face courses. And I think he does that anywhere between 5 to 7 weeks, depends on how you want to break it up. Before COVID hit, yes, here in the North Carolina, I do live face-to-face courses. But since COVID, we've taken it all online, and we do virtual 5-week courses. And then it's like like a revolving door, like we do 5 weeks and then those people finish, and then we bring in 5 more weeks. And then we actually have one coming up. We start one August 4th. And so I think by the time this airs, the enrollment will still be open if people want to jump in to the course.
Yes. And then, so, and then we have plans, Rapid area here sometime in September, hopefully September, a live one actually with your father-in-law. So
that's great.
Plan anyway. Right. And so if we look at it from today, I know the question is, well, why do we have to know more about the past? Why can't we just begin today, right? just start today.
Mhm.
What's the problem with that?
I don't know how you would do that. Like, how would you, I
But
mean,
do you hear people saying that? I
well,
mean,
yeah, people
hey,
don't want to,
hey, we don't need to hear about the past and that, the
yeah,
past is gone. Let's just begin today.
right. Well, you have to know how we got here. You have to know how we got here, know how things were made, know how things were put together so that you can begin to unmake them, or create something differently. I think, yeah, like we don't exist in a vacuum. Like that's so unrealistic. That's like, I didn't drop here out of the heavens. Like not even Jesus did. Like, okay, I'm 33 now, and now I'm going to do all of the things, there was context, there was culture, there was a country, there's all these things at play that culminate into the where he was when he did his work and where we are when we're having to do our work, and all of that has to be taken into consideration. And then here's another, see, and maybe because I think of it this way, because I'm a nerd, like I love to learn. And when you look at the history of race in our country, and my high school students get very good at this very quickly, you notice the patterns. And so when you see, oh, it's the same patterns over and over and over again, then you are equipped, right, to then do the counter to that, pattern, to break the pattern. If we just didn't look at the history and we started right now, we probably keep on
Right.
recreating or perpetuating the patterns. And so I tell you, my high school students, they get it. They know these patterns. I can't go into them because then I'll just start teaching too much content, and we don't have time for that. But I'm telling you, you want to know the history because that is empowering and that equips you.
Well, and I think you put it in terms of cause and effect as well. If you don't, just in the world that I often work in continuous improvement, if you don't really understand the cause, you're not going to be able to put in place a solution. And so instead, then you're just dealing with symptoms.
There you go.
Never really getting to the root cause. And I liken it to, if we don't actually get to the root cause and make changes,
that's right.
It's like the individual that makes a cake, doesn't like the taste of it, makes another one using the same ingredients, just stands outside the oven screaming, better cake, better cake. It's
that's good.
Work, right? Unless we have different inputs.
That's good. Yeah.
The outputs are going to remain the same. So that has been a help for me of better understanding historically how we have gotten to
and same with any kind of generational, or let's say any kind of disease, right? It isn't like if you just put, like you want to get to the root cause. Otherwise, you can take some medicine, but the disease will keep manifesting in your body unless you uproot the cause.
Right. What are some, as we're kind of wrapping down, what are some practical things that individuals can begin to do to take it from just the words to actually doing something?
Well, I always go back to learn. Like the more you learn, that will inform your action, and it's going to be different for different people. So for example, I get to do a lot of work in schools. So as an educator, I'm going to teach differently. I'm going to my curriculum content will not be one that reinforces the racist or the racial status quo. As a parent, like in our family, it began with having a different framework for how we explain humanity to our children and who they are and their place in the world and, other people. If you are a business owner, it could be about your practices and who you choose to mentor and give opportunities or afford opportunities to neighborhoods, groups of people who have been divested or who, because of our racist policies, have not had opportunities. If you're an investment banker, maybe you choose to be intentional about investing in places or investing in businesses who historically have not had the opportunity. And again, when you learn the history, it becomes very clear And maybe, yeah, you might still need some help, like, because it's new, but still, at least you have the question, at least you're asking, at least you're wanting to do something to make the shift versus you're just waiting on somebody to tell you, to give you some steps. Like, tell me the 3 things to do. Well, how will you know that that's the right thing for you, for your family, for your environment, unless you yourself become informed and have some autonomy and some, oh shoot, I just lost the word, agency. You need to have agency, and that will help inform your action. Your own agency, like you, some responsibility, yourself. So sometimes also we, you know, we want to abdicate our own power, our own agency, and wait on like a leader, maybe a prescribed leader, to tell us what to do. And so, for example, in my situation, like with my family, I wasn't going to do that. I still don't know who that is. So as a parent, as a mom who wants I want my children to be able to navigate, you know, our society with some confidence, you know, and with some agency themselves. Like, they get to say who they are, not, you know, their friends tell them, well, oh, you're, you know, you're white, or you're not white, or you're black, or you're not black, or what are you? Like, you know, they walk in their own constitution, their own power, and they get to say. And so again, we need to, you know, allow ourselves to walk in our own agency and not just wait on someone to tell us what to do and what not to do.
Well, and I think in many cases too, we want to institutionalize things.
Oh, there it is.
We want to institutionalize it. So
That's
then
right.
it becomes the responsibility of this group to
That's right.
lead us, or that group to lead us, or as opposed to taking that individual accountability response.
Right.
And so
That's
I think
good.
that requires, I think, more so that challenge of evaluating our beliefs and our behaviors. And I think, would you say that is, you find that a particular challenge or reluctance in people to do?
Yes, I think I think in our culture, we're not taught to do that. It's not normative, which is again why it's such a significant part of the What Lies Between Us curriculum. And I was just talking to my father-in-law the other day, who said that people have a hard time with that part, asking these questions and asking these questions of themselves, just because we're out of practice or we haven't had opportunities to practice. But it's so important that we do that.
Well, I think, and then creating that culture where it's okay to say, this is how I feel. Because the goal is to, or this is how I behave. The goal is to then move beyond that. Where I think in so much too of our culture of wanting to be angry at this and angry at that, we are reluctant to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm screwed up in this area, because then
yeah, we're defensive, and you know, we get defensive, and even and some of that even is biological, and how our brain is actually designed to protect our beliefs. Like your brain, wants to protect your beliefs, even if the belief is harmful to you and harmful to other people. And so again, that's why we have to be aware. We have to be made aware of how we think. You know, in the book I say that we are neuroplasticians. So we are the beings who we can think about how we think, and therefore we're not just these byproducts of our, nurturing, but we actually have some agency and some autonomy to rewire our brains. And we also know that from Romans 12:2, that we can be transformed by the renewing of our minds. We have that capacity and capability. We just need to be encouraged to exercise it.
Right. Well, Dr. Berry, it has been a true pleasure to both meet you and to have you on the podcast. And there's so much that we could get into, which means send out a request to have you back on.
Okay.
But thank you so much. And where can individuals find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Right. So the place with the most information, I think, is brownicity.com. That's brownicity.com. And then I'm on Instagram. I love Instagram. Brownicity is on all the social media channels, but that's where you can find us.
All right. Well, thank you all again for listening and watching the ROC Nation Real Talk podcast. Thanks so much. All right.
Thank you.